We're ready to proceed?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
All rise for the jury, please. Please be seated.
Next witness, please.
Larry Llewellyn.
Be seated, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, if you will, feel free to adjust the microphone. Introduce yourself to the jurors and spell first and last name for our court reporter.
My name is Larry Llewellyn, Larry, L-A-R-R-Y, Llewellyn, L-E-W-E-L-L-E-N.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Division of Forensic Sciences, formerly known as the State Crime Laboratory.
And how long have you been employed at the State Crime Lab?
Almost 35 years.
And what specifically do you do at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's Department of Forensic Science?
I'm assistant manager of the toxicology section.
And what does toxicology mean?
We analyze biological specimens and tissues for the presence of drugs and poisons, and possible try to lend an interpretation to their relevance.
Have you always worked in toxicology with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
Yes, I have.
And when did you become the manager of that section?
I left for 6 years and then came back in 2000 and took a position as assistant manager.
What sort of training, education, and background do you have that qualifies you to work as a toxicologist with the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, and more specifically to manage that unit?
I have a bachelor's degree in biology. I have a master's degree in chemistry. I've also been on-the-job training at the crime laboratory, and we undergo continuous on-the-job training now for most of my career. As far as the assistant manager position, you just have to be thoroughly versed in the field of forensic toxicology.
We're very familiar with Mr. Llewellyn. We certainly would stipulate his qualifications, his field of practice.
We had asked for a stipulation about the reports prior to trial, so I didn't know that they would
I'm
do
not
that.
stipulating to the report, I'm stipulating to his expertise.
Fair enough. I'll tender him as an expert, and I trust will be received as one.
Apparently no objection.
No there.
Okay.
Please so testify.
Having received as an expert in toxicology, I want to ask you specifically about this case and about testing in general. Have you received biological materials in general to do a specific testing for drugs or for the presence or absence of drugs?
Relevant to this case?
Just talk about in general first.
Oh, yes, sir.
And what kind of tests do you actually perform on, say, blood, such that you can determine whether there's a presence or absence of particular drugs?
It would probably first be subjected to a procedure developed at the crime lab known as a blood immunoassay procedure. Afterward, it may go to one of multiple different types of tests. In this particular case, such as a liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry procedure.
That's a mouthful. Can you kind of describe what that process is?
Yes, that's the blood immunoassay procedure is a procedure we developed whereby the proteins in the blood are precipitated out and reconstituted in a supernate that's run on an immunoassay analyzer instrument. The second procedure is a very sophisticated procedure that runs on the instrument's also known as an LCMS triple quad, where in this particular case it was subjected and analyzed or tested for approximately 130 drugs.
Okay, and that's what I want to talk about. We heard some testimony this morning from the medical examiner about the collection of certain heart blood from juvenile victim Cooper Harris. Did you receive at the Georgia Bureau of Investigations tubes of this heart blood for further analysis?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and how was it received at the GBI?
It was received in a lockbox.
And can you describe the lockbox procedure?
Yes, an individual such as a medical examiner's representative will come and deposit evidence in this lockbox, and once he shuts the door, it locks, and the only way it can be opened is by a laboratory technician or evidence entry technician from the inside of the wall.
Once you received juvenile victim Cooper Harris's blood for analysis, what, if anything, did you do in terms of testing?
Yes, it was subjected, as I said, to the blood immunoassay procedure, and it screened for barbiturates, benzodiazepines, opiates, common opiates, cocaine, and cannabinoids or marijuana metabolites.
All right. And having screened that heart blood from Cooper Harris for these various drugs, using what you call the comprehensive drug scheme, what was your expert opinion about whether there was presence or absence of any drugs in the system?
We didn't find any indication of any drug either included in the immunoassay screen or in the liquid chromatography or the LCMS screen. Therefore, we can't say that we found the presence of any drug. Common drugs, whether sold over the counter or prescription drugs, in Cooper Harris's blood.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Llewellyn, you lost me at immunoassay, but bottom line is no evidence that Cooper Harris was drugged.
No, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Nothing further.
Mercedes?
Yeah. Thank you.
Next witness.
Well, let me ask you this. Would your report have showed that if somebody were able to read that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Have you called any?
Casey will. She's going to.
Thank you. I just didn't hear the name.
I'm sorry.
Welcome. That's
Probably mumbling through it, Judge.
Probably not listening. Be seated, please.
Once you're comfortable, if you would, introduce yourself to the jurors. Spell first and last name for our court reporter.
My name is Casey Wilson, K-A-S-E-Y-W-I-L-S-O-N. I am a crime lab scientist, a forensic toxicologist with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Division of Forensic Sciences, commonly known as the State Crime Lab.
And how long have you been employed with the State Crime Lab?
Over 16 years.
And have you always worked in the toxicology division there?
Yes, I have.
And what do you do generally as a forensic toxicologist for the Georgia Bureau of Investigations?
My primary duties are testing biological specimens for the presence and absence of alcohol, carbon monoxide, and other volatile substances, and I'm also able to test specimens for drugs as well.
Do you work with Larry Llewellyn in any capacity?
I do.
Okay, and is he one of the supervising managers of that section?
Yes, he is.
All right, and what sort of training, education, experience do you have that would qualify you to work for the Georgia Bureau of Investigations as a toxicologist?
I have 2 4-year degrees, one in biology and one in chemistry from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. I started working at the crime lab in January of 2000, where I assisted scientists in their day-to-day activities. And then in November of 2002, I was promoted to a forensic toxicologist, where I underwent the alcohol training program, drug training program, carbon monoxide training program, and other volatile substances. All of that includes quality measures, instrumentation, interpretation, pharmacology, and that's what the drug will do to the body and the body will do to the drug. I've also attended a course from Dr. Holbrook from Mercer University in pharmacology. I've also attended a alcohol course on highway safety from the Robert F. Borkenstein course in Indiana University.
And have you been tendered and received as an expert in forensic toxicology in the superior courts of the state of Georgia?
I have.
All right, at this time, I would tender Casey Wilson as an expert in forensic toxicology.
No objection.
Admit it.
All right, I want to ask first of all about a couple of topics. You talked a little bit about carbon monoxide, and I want to ask you about a term, carboxyhemoglobin. Can you tell a little bit about the jury about what that is, carboxyhemoglobin, and how that relates to carbon monoxide?
Carboxyhemoglobin is actually where carbon monoxide is actually attached to the hemoglobin that's in the blood. And the hemoglobin is what transports oxygen around your body so that you don't become hypoxic. If there's carbon monoxide there, the oxygen will not be displaced into your tissues, so thus you start feeling lightheaded and dizzy, and then you will finally pass out, and then it will lead to death.
You and I talked about a couple of examples of about how you might have levels of carboxyhemoglobin within your blood system. Would it, being involved in an arson situation or a situation near a house fire, could that cause you to have carboxyhemoglobin in your system?
Yes, it can.
And similarly, carbon monoxide poison, as we currently probably commonly think about it, if you let your car run or something like that, might you get it there if we're in an enclosed space?
That is correct.
And do you also test for alcohol, ethyl alcohol, at the toxicology section?
I do.
In this particular case, did you receive some blood samples from juvenile victim Cooper Harris to have some analysis performed on the samples?
I did.
And how were those retrieved by a lockbox?
Yes, sir. They were.
We've already heard some testimony about how that works, so we can skip over that part and just get to your testing. What, if any, testing did you perform on the blood that you received from the medical examiner's office for young Cooper Harris to be performed in this case?
I actually did two analyses. I did the alcohol analysis first, which is where I will test the sample twice in two different orders, and I get two different results, and that has to compare to one another, and it is placed on the report. Basically what happens is we take a small portion of the blood and place it into a vial, which looks, after we place the blood in there, like a medicine vial that you would get an injection from at the doctor's office. So there's a liquid portion at the bottom and an airspace above it. In that airspace, when we gently heat that sample, it will release any volatile substances that may be in that sample, and it will then be separated through our column, which is a very thin straw, based on their chemical and physical properties, and then it reaches a detector to give us a graphical representation of what may or may not be in the sample. So I did that for the alcohol analysis. For the carbon monoxide analysis, which I take part of the blood. I will then actually sonicate it, but what that sonication does, it uses a high frequency to bust open any clots that may be present in the sample. And then it will be placed into the instrumentation where it is diluted with a known substance. Our controls are done the same way, so we know that the instrument is working properly. And it will then take a reading of what may or may not be in the presence as to what wavelength is being absorbed. So then we get a number for those as well.
All right, let's take them one at a time. We'll take them in the order that you covered on. In the first test, this jury hasn't heard any evidence that there's been any alcohol in Cooper Harris' system, being only 22 months old. But having performed that test, can you confirm for us what your expert opinion is about the results?
Yes, the ethyl alcohol result was negative. So there was no ethyl alcohol in his system.
And to that note, did you generate a report to that effect?
I did.
Okay. And similarly, I'm going to ask you now about testing for the other substance, whether you could find any carboxyhemoglobin in Cooper Harris's blood that was received from the medical examiner's office.
The blood specimen was negative for significant quantities of carboxyhemoglobin.
So negative for alcohol, negative for carboxyhemoglobin.
Correct.
And you generated a report to that effect as well.
I did.
Thank you.
Excuse me. The test for carboxyhemoglobin, is that something that you do regularly?
It is something that we're asked to do by the medical examiner's office. So anytime there's usually a car-related death, or if there's a house fire or a suspicious death in a home, we will be asked to perform a carboxyhemoglobin analysis.
And have you had occasion to actually find it in some specimens?
Oh, yes.
All right. And are those cases where someone's been left in a car in a closed space and commonly referred to as kind of gassed to death?
Usually in those situations, they're in a closed-in vehicle inside of a closed garage, and it's more likely in a suicide situation.
And in your experience of those cases where suicide or not, where this is able to be done without anybody seeing what was going on because it was in a closed space?
It is possible, yeah.
Okay. And okay, so someone could die or be killed by secreting them in a place and allowing the motor to run to where they would suck in the carbon monoxide.
Correct.
Okay. But you didn't find that in this case?
I did not.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Would you expect to find that only in a situation where the car is left running and the person's exposed to that?
Yes, the car has to be running inside an enclosed space.
Thank you.
Nothing further, thank you very much.
Next witness.
State calls Mark Wilson. No relation. You got Ms. Porter?
I swear affirm the testimony that this is the court and jury on this shall be will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name?
Mark Wilson,
And Mr. Wilson, where do you live?
Rome, Georgia,
Okay. How old are you?
23.
Okay. What do you do for a living?
I own a piano moving company.
How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing it about my whole life. I've owned it for about 2 years now.
Okay. I'm going to turn your attention back to June 18th, that evening of 2014. Did you have the opportunity to check into the hotel otherwise known as the Cobb County Jail?
I did.
Okay. Could you tell the jury why you were going to jail that evening?
I had to serve the remaining of a 24-hour sentence for a DUI.
And at that point, were you doing that during the summer? Were you going back to college for a little bit right after that?
I was.
Okay. Did you come into contact with anybody in particular that you found later to be a guy by the name of Justin Ross Harris?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you come into contact with him?
I was sitting in the holding area, and I'd been there about 30 minutes, and he walked in and sat down next to me.
Okay. Now, was this holding area? Is this before you actually go into the actual jail part?
Yes.
Okay. Now, first, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury a little bit, how did we find you?
My dad suggested it, actually. I saw the story on Facebook and gave my story to the National Enquirer.
The National Enquirer. Okay. Now, when did you actually see this on the news? Or on Facebook?
The day after I got out.
Okay, obviously while you're sitting in there, you can't use Facebook, right? Okay. So you got out, you saw, you talked to your dad, and did you call the National Enquirer?
I did.
Okay. And did you tell them your story?
Yes.
Okay. Luckily, have you been shown video that actually shows you in there in the jail with Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Okay. So when you were sitting there in jail, in that holding area, when Mr. Harris came in, could you describe to the jury what he said initially and how he was acting?
When he first walked in, he looked at everyone and just said, "What's up, guys?" and acted pretty calm and nonchalant.
When he was there talking, was he asking y'all questions or anything, or?
He asked what we were in there for, a couple of us, and, you know, just small talk really. Asked what the process was and everything. That's about it.
Did he seem sad at all?
Not at all.
Seem upset?
No.
And this was sometime before midnight of June 18th, 2014.
Right.
I'm going to, one last time today, try to hook up the computer. I'm going to show you what I've marked previously for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 380. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 380. Do you recognize that? Yes. Okay, and how do you recognize this? What have you viewed on it? What is it?
It's sitting in the holding cell. Me and him just sitting there talking.
Is this a video that accurately reflects the time you were sitting there in the holding, the big pit area, and when the defendant walks in and sits there by you?
Yes.
Okay, and about how long are you all actually sitting there? Off and on for
together,
quite a while?
together about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, something like that.
You're on Tender State's 380 at this time.
It's submitted.
Everybody see this okay? Good. Yes. move this video along a little bit so I can actually capture what you were talking about. Mr. Wilson, might get you to step down from the stand for a minute. Come over here to the screen. Ask you to stand over on this side. As we're looking here at this screen, is this the pit area you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Is that you sitting right there?
Yes.
Okay, I paused it there at 23:58. Looking at that, is this the character you're talking about who walked in and had sat by you and talked to you that day?
Yes.
You can go ahead and have your seat. I'm just going to let it play for a little bit. Skip it ahead a little bit just to show that even minutes down the road, it's still the same type of thing going on, okay? You don't have audio on this, do you? There's no audio for you to hear what's going on. Is that him with his arm over the chair laid back like that?
Yes.
At 001246, y'all are still sitting there. Okay, I'm just going to pause it and stop it right there. Does that go on for quite some time until you actually go out and leave? And leave him there? That's all I have. Thank you, sir. Oh, wait, one other question. Just 'cause I'm sure everybody's dying to know. How much did the National Enquirer pay you?
I think it was $2,000.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Wilson, good afternoon. We heard in the opening that you're a Georgia Southern student, is that right?
I was.
You're not anymore? Did you graduate?
I did not.
Everything going okay?
Yeah, I started my own business, so I let it.
Good for you. You testified on direct that you found out about Mr. Harris through Facebook. You saw articles on Facebook?
I initially saw his picture and then read the story of what was going on at the time, and it was right after what happened. So
Do you remember the interviews that you gave with various media outlets?
I only gave one.
you were contacted by multiple, though, correct?
Yes.
Did they call you by phone?
They actually came to my house.
Came here. Okay. And you spoke with them?
Yes.
And that wasn't the National Enquirer?
No, that's the only one I did.
Oh, the National Enquirer came to your home? Okay. But you were contacted by multiple media outlets?
Yes.
Okay. As a result of your interview with the National Enquirer?
Correct.
Okay. Do you read the National Enquirer?
I do not.
So you get out of jail on June the 19th, right? And as you're walking out of jail, you see that there's a bunch of news trucks, right? So you knew that there was some story going on about somebody at the jail.
Right.
And you come home and you see Mr. Harris's face on Facebook.
Correct.
Were you researching it, or did it just come to you?
I was on Facebook scrolling through my newsfeed and it popped up. His picture did.
Okay. Did you read that article?
Somewhat.
And in fact, your interview with the National Enquirer wasn't until July the 15th, 2014, correct?
I couldn't tell you.
You have any reason to believe that it wasn't on July the 15th, 2014?
I do not.
You gave one interview with the National Enquirer, right? Did you read the article that was on their website?
I did.
Even though you've never read the National Enquirer, you don't read the National Enquirer, you wanted to read your article, right?
Yes, sir.
You got to be in the news, right?
Yep.
You got $2,000.
Yep.
Pretty easy. $2,000, wasn't it?
Fairly easy, I guess.
You get to come down to this beautiful place. They put you up for one night. Pretty easy.
Yep.
You don't know Mr. Harris.
Not from any other place, but the few hours we were together talking.
The state didn't ask you to identify him. I mean, do you recognize him?
Yes.
Okay. And you've seen him since, correct? You've seen him since June the 19th, 2014.
On the news, I have.
You've followed it, haven't you?
No.
You've seen it on the news.
Once or twice.
You don't know how Mr. Harris handles stress and tragedy, do you?
No.
We talked about how this was a 2.5 to 3 hour window of time where you were sitting in the same intake pit
Correct.
as Mr. Harris. You didn't watch that whole video, did you?
That whole video? I did.
They sat you in a room and you watched that whole video?
Yes, sir.
Good. So you remember that the females, they sit on the left, the males, they sit on the right.
Right.
In fact, the side where the ladies sit, it's a little closer to that camera, so you can see them a bit better. And there's a little group of young ladies that are cutting up and they're laughing. Remember that?
Right.
Do you remember seeing that, or do you remember that actually going on?
I remember seeing it on the video.
So you don't remember
I was,
those ladies
it was
cutting up?
behind me. I didn't look behind me really looking at them.
You don't remember on that video people turning and looking over the span of 3 hours as people would come and go. Anytime somebody would come in, everybody turns their attention, right? Everybody's looking around,
Right.
right? It's not uncommon for people to be looking around, right?
Right.
People are scared, right?
Right.
People are frightened, nervous. Mr. Harris wasn't cutting up like those ladies. You don't see it, right? You don't see it on the video. In fact, you don't remember it like that either. You remember when you were interviewed with the National Enquirer, you referred to Mr. Harris as Justin. Remember that?
Yeah.
He doesn't introduce himself as Justin, does he? You didn't know that he goes by Ross.
I didn't know.
Y'all don't talk very much. It's the truth.
What we could in 3 hours. Small talk.
Did you watch the very end of the video when you're called out by a jailer and you leave? Remember that? Remember where Ross was when you left?
You know,
When did you watch the video?
about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago.
Okay. You remember the end?
We didn't watch the very end of it.
So you didn't watch all of it.
Not the entire thing, no.
Well, let's talk about June the 19th. From what you remember, not what they've shown you. Do you remember where Ross was when you left?
I do know.
You remember seeing him on the phone?
Yes.
You remember him never saying, bye, like y'all were friends.
Right.
You just left. And he doesn't know you, right? You have no idea how broken he sounded on that phone talking to his brother. Do you?
No.
You don't know Ross. Right?
Right.
Did defendant ever say why he was in jail?
No, sir.
No. Defense counsel asked you if there were people in there frightened, nervous, scared. Would you describe Mr. Harris's behavior as any of that?
No.
When you got out and you saw the news truck, you said you knew something bad had happened. When you saw the news story, did you see what the accusation was? Somebody's child died.
I don't know, Judge.
Right.
It's a hearsay, Judge.
Judge has already asked about what he heard in the media and things like that. This effect on here.
That wasn't his testimony, and that wasn't my question.
What's the purpose of your question?
To talk about his behavior within the jail, to ask how it relates to what he heard the guy was charged with.
I'm not over objection, but you need to
Uh,
word it very, very, very non-hearsay-ish, carefully.
Did you learn from? Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, really.
Did you learn? Did you learn from the media that his son had died?
Yes.
Did his behavior there in the jail did it shock you?
Yes.
Judge, I'm going to object. It's an improper opinion, and it's not relevant whether he was shocked. That has no bearing on the decision that this jury has to make. None.
I agree.
I'll rephrase it. Did it appear consistent with somebody who just lost their son a few hours ago?
Judge, I'm going to
Absolutely
object to
not.
that question as well. There's no foundation for how this witness should be able to offer that opinion.
Judge, you personally, thank you. You can answer.
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, do you have children?
I do not.
Thanks.
Nothing further, Judge.
Very good. Next witness.
Tomorrow?
Approach. discuss this matter with anyone else, let anyone talk to you about it, or each other. No contact with any attorneys, parties, or witnesses to the case. No independent investigation of any sort, electronically, by any other media, of anything to do with this case. Have a very pleasant evening. I'll see you in the morning at 8:30.
What you got, what is it, Chair? Yeah.
I have nothing to say.
Be seated, please.
Anything else in the state or defense before we break?
Nothing to say.
Are we on pace now, or are we,
Absolutely.
okay. Are we ahead of pace?
A little bit, but I have confidence it will slow down.
No, I do too. I just wondered.
Yeah, we actually are a little bit ahead of pace from a week ago, what we expected.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. That's very, very good news. Everyone have a very good evening. We'll start at 8:30 in the morning.
Thank you.
Of course.